Governor Gary Johnson is on the line with us right now, the former governor of New Mexico, a candidate for the Republican nomination for President of the United States. GaryJohnson2012.com is his website if you want to get all the information, all the details and policies and whatnot. And Governor Johnson, welcome to the program.
Tom, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. I understand that Newt Gingrich has just come out and said, well, actually didn't just come out and say, but has affirmed that when he was Speaker of the House of Representatives, he proposed that anybody who imports more than 2 ounces of marijuana should be executed, should be, put up on a wall and shot or put in a gas chamber or given a lethal injection or maybe have their head crushed. I don't know what method of execution he favors. I find this bizarre. It seems to me that the war on drugs is killing more people than the drugs are. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, nobody in the history, in the 230 plus year history of the United States, has ever died of a marijuana overdose. What are your thoughts on this?
I have to think that somebody has smoked themselves to death somewhere, but I also agree with your point. Since 1999, I have advocated legalizing marijuana. The notion that 100 million Americans have smoked marijuana and that today 50% of Americans support legalizing marijuana. I think that's good. That's what we ought to be doing. Look, let's stop spending half of what we spend on law enforcement, the courts, and the prisons on drug-related crime. And I've always said for law enforcement to redirect their activities to real crime, that's going to make life better in this country. When it comes to all other drugs, I think we should look at drugs first as a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue, and that starts with decriminalizing drug use.
Yeah, which is what Portugal did a couple of years ago, and they've seen it basically broke the back of organized crime in that country.
Well, 10 years ago, Portugal decriminalized all drug use, and they did that in response, this is my understanding, they did that in response to a heroin epidemic.
Yep.
And in the last 10 years, they've documented a 50% reduction in heroin use. I mean, it kind of flies in the face of what you would think would happen.
Well, there's nobody making money on it.
Well, yeah, and what it points toward is, let's look at this issue in different ways that Holland and, in particular, Portugal have addressed it, and see if we can't really apply those solutions to really come up with solutions, if you will.
Right. Now, Ron Paul agrees with you on this. In fact, he famously got an applause line for heroin in one of his speech in one of his Republican debates. Do you think that there is a constituency in the Republican Party beyond the libertarian wing of the Republican Party that Ron Paul represents that agrees with this, what I would characterize as simply rational approach?
Well, regardless of whether it exists or not, this is an issue that, in my opinion, does really, really well when people talk about it. When you shine light on this issue, which hasn't had light shined on it, we've had the death penalty proposed for possession of a certain amount of marijuana with intent to distribute in the country. Look, that doesn't get discussion anywhere. But when you start talking about drug policy and the alternatives that exist, Republicans, Democrats, you name it, this is an issue that the more people talk about it, the more we move in the direction of what I call rational drug policy.
Do you think that, or might it be a possibility that while Ron Paul can talk about this in the Republican debates because he has this large libertarian contingent, which is a faction within the Republican Party behind him on virtually every issue. I mean, he wants to completely do away with virtually all federal agencies, Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, everything. It just, nuke it all. Basically, Army, police force, and a court system to enforce laws against fraud. He has that libertarian contingent. You are a bit more of a traditional Republican, if I understand your bio correctly. Do you think that your policy on the libertarian dimension of your policy on drugs is one of the things that has marginalized you in the Republican Party?
Well, I don't know as I disagree with Ron Paul as much. I certainly would articulate issues differently. I'm believing that we are going to experience a monetary collapse unless we balance the federal budget. So I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013 should I be elected.
How would you achieve that?
Well, you're talking about a 43% reduction in government spending, and you start by talking about Medicaid and Medicare and military spending. Okay. I happen to believe that government does have a role to protect us against individuals, groups, businesses, corporations that would do us harm if not looked at or looked after by the government.
During the Republican Eisenhower administration, corporate income tax accounted for over 40%. And my recollection is it was 43%. It may have been 34%. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was one or the other. But it was substantial. It was between a third and almost half of total federal incomes into the federal coffers. Now, I know for a fact it's 11% or below that. That seems like that in and of itself, if you simply had corporations paying the same tax rates or get the same tax collections, forget the rates, get the same tax collections that the Republican Dwight Eisenhower got with the Republican Senate, that at least during part of that time, that would solve much of the problem. I mean, why does it have to be spending cuts? Why not raise taxes?
Well, I'm promising to advocate on the part of throwing out the entire federal tax system and replacing it with the fair tax. And for those listening, I would love for everybody to check out fairtax.org. But it does away with all existing federal tax and replaces it with a 23% federal consumption tax. And if you're gasping at adding 23% to all new goods and services, it's very arguably cost neutral over a short amount of time because you're going to take taxes that are hidden currently and you're going to make them very transparent. So,
are you going to do away with the payroll tax, the tax that funds Social Security and Medicare?
So no more withholdings from your payroll check, but Medicare, Social Security, those funds would come out of the fair tax that gets collected. So no more withholdings from your payroll.
So somebody paying $6,000 a year, which right now they're paying 6.5%, 7% into. Actually, there's been a drop, but they're paying into Social Security. That's going to go up to 23% because they're not paying federal income tax right now. If they're making, if they're a greeter at Walmart making $10,000, $12,000 a year.
No, what I'm saying is that your Social Security will not be withheld. And there will not be an employer match anymore.
Right, but you will pay a 23% flat tax.
Flat tax, a consumption tax.
Right, or a consumption tax on everything you buy.
23% consumption tax.
Well, 100% of everything those people earn, they spend. So that would be on all of their income. I'm sorry, Gary Johnson, we don't have enough time to get into this, but people can read about it at GaryJohnson2012.com. Thank you, sir.
Very good, Tom. Thank you.